Hey guys, it's Connor, and today we're talking about cinematography and video games. Cinetracer is a video game designed by professional cinematographer Matt Workman, who you may know from his work on the channel Cinematography Database. The idea behind this software is that anyone can create virtual mock-ups of lighting, composition, and plan an entire shoot in 3D before even stepping on set. In the industry, this is known as previs, or pre-visualization. It's essentially an illustration of what the final product is going to look like. In the past, you only had two options. If you wanted to do a storyboard, you could hire a storyboard artist, or if you were somewhat artistically inclined yourself, you could maybe draw the storyboards by hand. But if you wanted to do it in 3D and really show off more complex things like lighting and depth, the software that was available is a lot more expensive and a lot more complicated. Not only that, but a lot of the software isn't really tailored towards cinematography, it's more just about 3D work in general. I've been using the software for several months now to plan out my shoots and my lighting, to convey visual ideas to my clients, and most of all to practice things like lighting and picking the right lenses and all the skills that you need to have as a cinematographer. I think this is a must-have educational tool. It's not just about the previs aspects, but it's really an educational, hands-on way to practice your cinematography without having to own any of that gear. Today we're going to take a look at what it is, how it works, what it's capable of, and more importantly, what's coming in the future. Right now, you can buy it for both Mac and PC, but keep in mind that it's still in Steam's early access category, which means this is not a full version release. It's still in the beta testing stages. You're gonna see some rough edges a little bit as we're going through this, but that's okay. The whole point of this is so that users can give feedback on new features and help with bug fixes and things like this so we can develop the best product possible. It is not a perfect, full, final product right now, but it absolutely will be down the road. The best way to show off Cinetracer is just to jump right in, so we're going to go ahead and create a little bit of a music video lighting setup completely from scratch. We're going to create a new project, and as you can see, there's a ton of maps to choose from, with more being added all the time. Once you load up your project, there's a few different character controls. You can use WASD to move around. You can hold right-click to move the camera around. You can hold Shift to run. And if you want to go faster, or if you just want to work on some rigging really up high, you can double tap space, and he's got a little jetpack, and he can fly around using that. And again, you can hold shift to go faster as well. The controls are very similar to any sort of video game, especially MMO type video games and stuff like that. So it's very intuitive, very natural. So this is the space that I want to start building in, and in order to start building, you can just hit the tab button. And this is where you have all the tools to get actors, props, lighting, anything you could possibly need. I want to do sort of a hip-hop style music video, so I'm going to start by just getting a really cool car. So we're going to go to props, and you can go by category or you can go show all. There's a ton of different props here, from desks to smoke effects and haze and stuff like this to kitchens. So I'm just going to start by going back to props here, cars, and we're going to get this SUV in here. Now I can go ahead and move this around and place it wherever I want, and if I rotate the mouse wheel, I can actually spin it in place. So I'm just going to spin it and put it about somewhere around there. Works for me. Now if you hit G, you can actually change the color of the car as well. You can change the color of a lot of things in here, but I'm just going to go ahead and keep it white, and we're just going to hit OK. If you're not happy with the placement, you can see the X, Y, Z values come up here, and I can click on one of them and drag it in any direction. Can move it up and down. Really simple, really straightforward and intuitive. Now I'm going to throw my actor in here so that I can really read the lighting and make sure I'm getting the right quality of light and all that kind of stuff. So we hit tab again to open up that menu, go to actors. I'm going to go to simple actors. They can do a few different animations and stuff like this. You've also got options for stand-ins, which are a little bit higher quality and probably better for lighting representations, but you can't animate them. And there's also some CC actors, which can also do some basic animations and stuff like this, but they're just not quite as detailed as these simple actors. We're just going to go ahead and grab this one here, import, and again, we can place wherever necessary. I'm going to rotate her to face towards camera. I'm going to place her here. And as you can see on the right hand side, we can press 4 to get an action assigned to her. So if we press 4, she can start walking in place. Press it again, she starts talking. And we're going to go with this seated action here because I'm actually going to put her on the car. You may be wondering why there's all this ambient light and yet we don't have any light sources in this room to speak of, and that's just because there's multiple lighting presets that we can use. This is the best one for putting together everything before you start getting into the details of lighting, because you can see without having to add all your light sources first. But if you want to change it up, you can go to these presets in the top right, and if you look outside here, you can see right now we're on bright. You can do daytime warm, sunset, twilight, overcast, or just pitch black. So pitch black is going to be the most realistic if you're in a room with no windows and no lights, or if you're filming at nighttime and you really want to see what your lighting's going to do. We're going to stick with brightness while we're working though. I don't really like the whole vibe of this room, and I feel like just plain white walls doesn't really work for this setup. So I'm going to go ahead and add a brick wall to the background. We're going to run over here and same thing, just press tab, and we're going to go to building and blocks. And this is sort of all the modular blocks that work really intuitively together. So I'm going to click on block wall, import. I'm going to rotate it with the mouse wheel again, and I'm just going to place it right here. And the first thing I'm going to do is click on this paintbrush here to change the material. So we've got a ton to choose from, and I'm just going to go with this plain brick texture here. And now if we press Y, we can get rid of our little person here so that we're just kind of a floating camera, which I find is easier to work with when I'm building. So if you click any of these arrows here, it's going to just automatically attach a wall to it. So if we do this arrow here, it adds one in this direction as a little corner, or we can add one to the side. Same with adding one above. I'm just going to quickly create this brick wall using those tools. That's looking much better for me. So now we can start adding some lighting in. So tab again, we go to our departments, lighting. Now I'm going to start with our key light, and I want a nice big soft source. So I'm going to go to movie lights, and we're just going to do a 12 by 12 frame. We're going to import that, rotate it the way we want, place it. We can move it up out of the ground here. Now we can control both the color and intensity of any light. So we can drag it up so it's super bright, or we can keep it really dim. I'm going to leave it at about default here for now. And I also want the key light to be white, so I'm going to leave that. But again, if you want to change the color, you just press G, and we can make it any color that we want. Next, I want to add some more visual interest, so I'm going to go in and add some tube lights underneath the car with some color as well. So I'm going to rotate these and place them just in line with the tires. And I'm going to do sort of a teal and red kind of look. So we're going to drag this over here. Something like that. Maybe brighten them up a little bit. If I don't want to keep creating the same object over and over and assigning the color and the texture and all that, you can just click on something and press C to duplicate it or to copy it. So we'll move over, hold right click to move the camera, and place that underneath the car. So that's going to have the same color and the same brightness values that we've assigned to the first light. Now we should probably figure out what our shot is actually going to look like, what our composition will be. So I'm going to throw a camera in here so that we can use that as a reference. So I'm going to use the camera dolly just because I can adjust the height and the distance. I'm going to import that. I'm going to place it right about here. Now if you click on your camera and press E, you'll enter a few different views. This is just rotating around the camera. You press V, and now you've got a viewfinder attached to it and the overall view, and press V again and you just get through the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and do something more like a 35 mil, somewhere around there. I'm going to click on her face to focus properly. And as you can see, you've got a ton of control here. I like the 35, but I'm not big on the composition here. So I might just move everything back just a little bit. So press E to hop out of the camera again. And we're just going to push everything back a touch. That's looking a lot better. Now I'm just going to adjust some of the camera settings. I want this to be a really shallow depth of field. So if you look up top, if I hold shift and move the mouse wheel, it's going to change my iris. So we can darken it, brighten it up. So I'm going to go all the way and just do 1.3. We're going to focus again just to make sure. And now we can adjust our exposure. We can compensate for this by changing the ISO. And if you see at the top again, you just hold Alt and mouse wheel just to fix our exposure. You can also get different aspect ratios by pressing R. So we can do 2:1, 2.4:1, lots of different options here. So I'm just going to go with a 2:1. So let's get some more visual interest and some color contrast. We're going to add some more quasar tubes on the back wall here. And this time I'm going to make them red, so we have sort of a cyan and red look going on. So I'm going to hit G, do more of a red color here, maybe even a pink. And as I said before, we're just going to go ahead and duplicate these. Great, let's go see how that's looking in camera. Awesome, that's looking better. There's a little bit of artifacting going on with the lights here. Sometimes it does that, sometimes it doesn't. Again, this is really early beta, really early access. What's interesting too is that I've created this setup before in a separate project, and that artifacting isn't there and isn't a problem whatsoever. So it is a little finicky, but it's all going to be ironed out. So let's get a more realistic idea of this lighting, and let's go to black just to see what's going on here. So this is going to be a lot more realistic to what the lighting conditions would be in a room with no other light sources than what you've set up. So let's go ahead and compensate with our ISO here. Bump that up just a little. Something like that. Looking good. Now I want to add a backlight here, so we can go back to our lighting. We're going to use this one. Now we can raise that up. I'm going to go with a more sort of tungsten color here. And now we can actually also add a lighting stand to it. So if we go to lighting and grip, we can pull up a crank stand here, place it here. And if we click on the light and then just move the mouse over the stand, you'll see you get the prompt to press E to attach it. And now we can just adjust the pan and tilt as necessary. And I'm going to do twilight this time. I want a little bit of ambient light because I think that's slightly more realistic to the way this 12x12 is kind of going to bounce in a white room and stuff like that. And we're going to check it again. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool to me. If we go up to the sky control here, we can actually adjust the amount of haze in the scene as well. So we can completely cut it out, or we can max it out. And if we go into the camera, you can see everything's much more washed out. Those blacks are really lifted. It's looking really cool. Or we can take it out completely. I'm going to leave just a little bit because I like what it's doing with that edge light there. If we go back in camera, it's a lot more higher contrast, a lot less haze to speak of, and it's very realistic as well. So I'm happy with the setup, but I'm just going to add one more thing. The car itself is looking a little dark, so I'm just going to throw a quasar in the back seat here. And if we get rid of our guy by, again, pressing Y, we can go inside the car here and press tab, pull up our tube light again, import, and again we can press G to change the color. We're going to do that same sort of teal look. I'm going to crank up the brightness here. We'll jump back in camera. Yeah, that's looking way better to me. I really like the look of this setup, and I'm happy with it. And this would be a really realistic representation of what it's going to look like on set as well. And that's the biggest selling point of this software. As far as what's coming in the future, Matt has mentioned a lot of things like support for ray tracing. He's just added a new Mac Pro he posted on Instagram as a prop. Lots of new props, lots of maps, and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of features that have been requested quite a bit that I would be very surprised if Matt didn't implement them. One of them is realistic representations of the brightnesses for all these different lights. So you know for sure if you're cranking up a quasar tube really bright in Cinetracer, you're gonna know if that's too bright for the actual light or not. Updates to Cinetracer are coming about once a month, and I'm only on version 0.32, so there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think that's a good indication of just how much Matt wants to work on this and add to it. If you are an independent filmmaker of any kind, I cannot recommend the software enough, and I really do feel like in a year or two when we get the full release of this product, it's going to be a must-have for anyone. Every single time an update gets released, which is usually every couple weeks to a month, he adds a ton of new features, and Matt is so on top of this and so dedicated to making this practical for filmmakers that I really can't see a reason not to get it, especially right now when the price is going to be lower than at full release. By now, I hope you can see that not only is this a great tool for conveying ideas and planning out your shoots before you step on set, but it's also an invaluable educational tool for trying out different lighting setups, for using gear that you don't have, for figuring out what's the right focal length to get the look that I want. You can practice all of this right at home from your laptop. You can practice this on a plane. You don't have to have any of the gear with you in order to develop these skills, and I think that is just absolutely invaluable for any filmmaker. The best part about getting it now is that you get to be a part of the entire development process. Matt has set up a Discord channel where we all chat, we show the kind of projects we're working on, we show what it's capable of, and we get to request new features. And Matt's very collaborative, and he's focused on building a community of people and delivering the best product that serves all of those people. If you want to grab this software for yourself, I'm going to leave a link in the description to where you can get it. And if you feel like this video helped you out, I'd really appreciate you helping me back by liking, subscribing, all the stuff that you already know how to do. And until then, I will see you in the next video.